Welcome to the very first episode of the HubHive podcast. I'm joined today by my co-host, Garrett Jenkins, my best friend and also co-founder of HubHive, where we're on a mission to strengthen the fabric of communities. And the goal of this podcast is to meet fun new people who are on this same journey with me, whether they're businesses looking to be discovered within communities or community hosts where we want to learn more about their community. So we're going to jump right into this very first episode.
I got my XD socks from back in the day. All right, so welcome to the HubHive podcast. This is our first podcast, the idea that we've had for centuries.
Yep,
to start
always
a podcast.
wanted to do this. Always.
So we're going to talk a little bit about communities and about HubHive. We're best friends, starting like the coolest app in the world.
Yep.
Starting from, how long have we been working together? It's been at least 20 years.
20 years that let's see, I was 18. So yeah, it's 20 years
20
this
years,
year.
there you go. Here's our 20-year anniversary.
I was 18 when I started over at KCMPC, and then we became best friends instantly, right?
Yep. And then our worlds diverged as far as like for business, for work. Then I got into like the software design development, and you stayed a engineer.
That was like 5 years after we started.
Yeah, so we worked
together
for 5 years.
At least
and
5
then
years.
We diverged a little bit, but we're in the same building, so.
We've been in the same building since 2008, I think.
Yeah.
2007. 2007 is when we moved over there.
Yeah, so it's been.
Actually, you went over to that place on 30.
Yeah, I went and worked in someone's closet for a little bit, and then.
Then he came out of the closet.
That didn't work too well. Yeah, so then we got our own office, and we're moving up in the world. But yeah, a huge theme of a lot of our walks has been like, man, in an alternate universe, it'd be nice to work together again.
Oh yeah. So there was at one point where we go on walks almost every day, and at one point we started talking about me becoming like a data analyst kind of thing. Like what you're getting, was that Tableau that you were getting into?
You're like, I don't know, I don't want to do that. Why don't you just become an engineer? No.
We tried a lot of different ways to try to figure out ways to work together.
Yeah.
And then finally, just some creative boom came to me and my wife, Raylyn, at the beginning of this year. We just started thinking of different ideas in different ways, and we just thought...
It was the end of last year, actually.
Oh, it was the end of last
year.
Yeah, that's right. And we just came up with, how can we help people to amplify what they're doing without them having so much technical background? And I had this idea.
Maybe hit record on your mic, just in case it's not picking it up on this side. It should be picking it up, but I'm just in case we're going to onboard. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh. So anyway, we tried to think of ways to amplify what somebody was doing without them having to have such a technical background in marketing and ways. And since my best friend Caleb is in that world, then I was like, okay, we've got to do this for the small communities or the small mom and pop shops, because Raylyn was just barely starting to think about doing an Etsy shop. So I was like, well, how can we get the word out there? And so I kind of had this idea forming of how we can help a lot of the people that we know to
be
amplify what they
right?
do. Yeah, be discovered in a way that doesn't require them to build a website or even understand Shopify and things like that. So then I went to Caleb and I said, okay, Caleb, I have this idea, but I want you to come up with the same idea. So what's your idea that we can do? And what was the question that I presented you with? I kind of forget.
So I think you said like for moms to make ends meet, like moms that are staying at home.
Yeah.
Because that was the problem that you had, right?
That was the phase of life that we were going through. Was we had enough kids now to where it was more expensive for us to send the kids to a babysitter than it was for Raylyn to work.
And so she had a little bit of a entrepreneurial mindset already, and she was kind of facing the challenge of how do I become discovered? Because a lot of people have these ideas, right, of we can do this, but then some of them, they have to get into the Shopify world and the other things, or else they just stay this small. And so that was the question that you posed, just like, how do you make an opportunity for moms staying at home to kind of make it and to make some side income? And I was like, man, I'm stumped. I think he gave me 2 weeks.
Yeah, I said, I'll give you a couple weeks, and then actually I said, just take your time. And then it wasn't until probably 3 weeks later that you were just finally like, I can't think of anything. What are we gonna do? What is it?
Yeah, and that's when he says they're already doing something, and I was like, oh, there's a. You're saying how do you just make what they have discoverable?
Yeah. So how do you give them a way to have an audience? You can do all this stuff on Etsy, you can do all this stuff on Shopify, but I wanted to figure out a way to get them an audience. And since you're in marketing, I was like, you have to be on board with it in order to make it work.
Well, yeah, initially, then I was only thinking about like our circle of friends and family and like our community.
Yeah.
And so when you were saying that I was like right away, I told you, this is a really good idea. It's not going to make any money.
Yeah, it's not going to make any money.
That's a really good idea.
You said for a long time.
And I thought, I didn't think, when I'm thinking about a market analysis, I'm thinking about a cost analysis. I do all this stuff when I think about starting something new, where I'm like, we've got such a small market, because I was only thinking about, just the people that we knew and a need for our community. But at some point we kind of broke out into like, this is a global app.
And it's hard, we can't pinpoint. We haven't been able to pinpoint when that was, but I think it was probably within a week after we had that initial conversation at the Carl's Jr. on 5300 South.
Yeah, and probably after we started. So this was pretty cool. So a lot of people come to me, I've got this idea, you go ahead and do it, and we'll be 50-50 partners. Like, you do all of it, here's my 2 cents, and then with my 2 cents I get 50%. And I'm like, man, I'd like to give somebody my ideas.
Yeah, have them run with it.
Trade-off. But a lot of those ideas come with, talking about who is your customer, what is your market, what is it going to cost to get to market. Like, a lot of stuff that goes in. I've had people come with, awesome, this is the Airbnb of equipment sharing or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I tell them is, how do you bootstrap it? How do you not spend $100,000 or $250,000 trying to build something that somebody will love, but then you find out, I guess, nobody wants it.
Awesome.
And so my recommendation to people like that, for example, is try Facebook Marketplace, try some other markets, and just get some feelers out there to see what's going to stick. And then you can have something that's measurable. No matter how small it is, you can measure that and say, okay, now if we scale it this, you're sticking to something reliable instead of just going all in. And I remember even that idea of the one that came to me, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to go all in on this. I'm like, don't do that. Don't do that. It's probably a really good idea, and that's the one thing that, when you had this idea, then I was thinking, both you're pretty tech savvy. In fact, you figure out a lot of stuff pretty fast.
Yeah.
Not like as a software developer, but like, you get in and figure things out. And that's something that for me, I knew it was a great idea when you told me, but everybody has their hands full of everything. And so that's what I told you, right, is okay, if this is going to work, let's just bootstrap it. Let's not spend, and I think I told you, let's do this without writing a single line of code.
Yeah, you did. You actually were like, you said, you got to do this, and you got to do this, and you got to do this. And I said, hold on, I want to do this with you. Like, we're going to do this together. And that was, I don't know if that's when it clicked for you that we were going to have an opportunity to work together. But for me, it was like, this is our chance to do something as best friends and work and build something great.
Yeah, and there's so many things, like, just like Mark Zuckerberg says in one of the videos, like when somebody says, I don't know how to build a dam, or I don't know how to do this, he's like, nobody does when they begin.
Yeah. And that's what one of the things you said in the beginning. You said, this is what we have in mind right now, but it's going to be totally different by the time we get done.
And
now looking at it,
so far, right? It's like,
what does it resemble of what? I mean, the idea is still there, but the original idea is just a small part of what it is.
Yeah, the core principle is there, but it's now becoming, how do we empower communities?
Yeah. Yep.
So
entire communities.
Yeah. So and communities have, like, they're so unique and nuanced, and like people create communities over the weirdest things, over the
Yeah.
like the craziest things. And I think about, there's hobbyist communities, and that's some of the needs that I felt like in this platform that I've been trying to solve myself. So like I got into the airgun world. I'm like, I want to compete and shoot air guns and compete in that world. And so I got my first air gun, but I went to go be a part of something or learn how these things worked, and I felt very intimidated. And so even starting your first competition is like, where am I at? Are these guys gonna just make fun of me or whatever? But I think in any type of community scenario, it's like if the barrier to entry is hard and you're also intimidated by the prospect of it, you're probably not going to get very far. And so a lot of, when I joined my first competition, I would ask questions inside of a community for help, and I didn't get much help of what I was going for. So I had 2 or 3 friends that I would call to ask for some questions on like, what kind of caliber do I use and what's the distance and how do these competitions work. But I scoured the web to find things, and I felt very disconnected. And when I very first joined my first airgun competition, it was like, here's this email that has these instructions that has, you got to Venmo a guy and then fill out this Google form. But it was like, there were like 5 steps to get in that was kind of fragmented. Because these guys that create communities, they're not very tech savvy either. They just find the platforms that work. Like, we'll use Venmo for this, we'll use Google Forms for this, we'll use this for this. And part of that, like, I remember thinking, if I got to go through all this work and I'm scared to do it anyways, should I even become a part of this? I had to be encouraged by a friend to just go and do it.
And it's kind of driven by as much passion as you have too. Like if you're passionate about something, you'll dive in a little bit deeper than if.
Yeah.
But if you're new, then it's hard to have that.
Yeah,
that much passion.
And so that I was thinking, why? Because there's Facebook groups and people are in there, and there's group me's and things like that. But it still feels like you go into a group like that, you don't get the level of connection or help. But then you go to those events, and you're like, these guys are friendly, and they'll help you with anything. You want to borrow my sandbag? You want to do this?
But they don't have the methods to do that with the community.
Yeah, and I'm like, man, how do we create this in a digital form? Because you make those connections, then it just dies until the next event or meetup or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that was another thing too. I go to a competition, and there's a guy there selling targets, those silhouette shooting targets, and just a lot of guys that own different companies and do different services that I'm like, I would have never known. A lot of that was like, this could be something for everyone.
Yeah. And when we think about the different types of communities that it could be for, it's like there's so much more than just the hobbyist community. There's like the farmers market type communities. There's the career fairs. We helped run a career fair just earlier this year and used HubHive to do that, and it turned out pretty awesome. And there's also the like trade shows.
Yeah, I want to try a home and garden trade show.
Yeah. They
Like
have
every
those
time-
like 2 or 3 times a year.
Yeah, every time we go to something like that, then I'm thinking, we go there, we meet new people, we get the pamphlets, and then day 2, everything's like lost. Like you might buy 1 or 2 things at a home show, or there might be those alignments or connections if you're building a house, or if you're building a patio or something, where you can connect on there. But there's so much other like relationships that you can build and opportunities that maybe you don't need it right now, but it's kind of like you forget it, and if you need it in 2 months from then, you're kind of starting from square one, like, who's going to do this? And you forget.
Yeah, because you don't save all that swag that you picked up at the
Yeah.
trade show in a file somewhere. You just have it in your
It
mind.
comes
and
3,000 pages long.
Yeah, you can't remember all the people that you met, but if you had a way to keep track of those connections online with the communities that you create or the communities that you're a part of, then it makes it easier to use them
Yeah, so
in the future.
So people are trying to do this. Like, people want convenience, they want discoverability, and they want to not be bombarded by like all this distraction or this noise. So like when they're in communities, if things aren't relevant, very quickly they will mute them.
Yeah, which I do that a lot. And even if there's a lot of chatter, then you can.
And then
mute
you
them.
go into it when you need something. Like,
Yeah.
So a community is built when you give, and then take. Give, and then take. And so the way that the digital platforms are set up is things are so distracting. You maybe don't even know where you can give because there's so much going on that you would take all your time trying to find, like, where could I help, that you mute things. So when people have questions that you could offer, you just even miss the chance to offer that. But then you dive in to ask for something, and then there's everybody asking and nobody giving. That's what I think is in there. And you'll find that, like, I'm in search of this. Can someone recommend a good this? And you'll find that you're like, that was asked 10 times this week.
Mm-hmm.
And so you look at that and you say, and then people get fed up. Like, man, how many people have to ask that's in there? There's so much gold in a conversation or in a group, like a Facebook group or a group me, but there's no way to even really find it. The easiest thing is just to ask again.
And that's what people are always going to resort to, is the easiest thing online. You're not going to search through anything, but that's what we should talk about how HubHive is going to solve those problems too, right? Like, HubHive's intention is to take all that information, compile it through AI and through different algorithms to package it in a way that if somebody is in search of something, the answer's already there somewhere within that community. But HubHive packages it in a way that applies to their likes, their hobbies, or whatever they have in mind for that type of service. Or, I mean, it could be applied for restaurants or products as well.
Yeah, so think of it as like a virtual assistant. And maybe we'll use Connect Utah, for example, because we both live in Utah. It's Connect Utah is a community of a lot of entrepreneurs and small business people and just people that need services like electricians, tax services, or accounting. But think of a virtual assistant that will go, and every time something's asked and somebody recommends 30 things, they will go in there and vet out and say, we're going to compile this somewhere, just be discoverable like that, where now it becomes easier instead of asking again. And if you do ask again, that virtual assistant comes up and says, hey, this has been asked 30 times, and here's a summary of all these conversations and recommendations to give you the best recommendation for your need. And
exactly.
So people, I think, are still in the habit of in search of. So we need to find features that are there and help with however their habits are of doing those things. Obviously, you can go right into products or right into services and browse it like you would Amazon or you would like Thumbtack or Angie's List. You could do something like that, but if somebody still has that habit of in search of a tax preparer or something like that, they could still get that fresh advice that, my need's different than anybody else's, so I just need to ask these questions, right?
Specifically, yeah.
But we could take those pieces of what they ask and they say, this piece is similar to what Garrett asked 2 months ago when he asked this, and this was the best recommendation for Garrett. That wasn't the best recommendation for others that didn't have that detailed need.
Yeah.
And so it really is, if you hired someone to find those things for you and to spend the 2 or 3 hours inside of a group to say, here it is, here's what you need, and within the 2 or 3 suggestions that it gives for whatever service need, that you could have that 98% confidence of just that's going to fit.
Yeah, especially because it comes from the community members that you know and trust. If it came from some random forum of, say, you're looking for the best gun to buy on air gunners, then they're not a trusted source yet. And so once you find that trusted source within the community of hobbies or activities or whatever your interests are in that community, then you have that trusted source. So that's why you say that 98% chance that that's what you would want to do, or the suggestion that you'd want.
Yeah, so products too, thinking about products. So like your wife did a lot of Etsy and like
Shirts
arts,
and
like
art.
digital prints and some laser engraved stuff. Things that are like, they're very specific for that rare time that somebody needs that. And so you think about a community too of who needs those things. And it's not, people have their ideas of what they want to offer, but in order for people around you to know that, you've got to constantly be telling them like, hey, I've got these digital prints on sale. I've got these shirts on sale.
You have
I've
to
got
be
this.
annoying.
And yeah, you have to be annoying. And you kind of want to keep the relationship with your friends and family more of a, yeah. And so this is where, anybody starting out with any business, selling chocolates for Valentine's, or just somebody wanting to do something and start out, they'll always start with their 5 closest friends, and then their 5 closest friends, and whatever.
Yeah.
And then kind of find a market, but that's where they start with the testimonials, and then like, whatever, I love your chocolates, like those types of things. And then they come to this idea of like, okay, I'm selling like 20 of these a week or something. Now what's next? And so they create Facebook, and they create these other accounts, and maybe try Shopify. But then a lot of people, like, they'll stop before that because they're into chocolates, they're not into building websites. And they might find a guy that builds a website, like, can you do this? And yeah, for 10, 20, 30 grand. The barrier to entry there is like, I can't do this. But how do we automate and simplify and create a marketplace for anyone to just bring that stuff in there, have that community vet it, give the testimonials, things like that, but also have it in a marketplace that can grow beyond that? And that's where, for us users of a platform like HubHive, the reason why we go to Amazon or your favorite online store that sells everything is because you can tap 99% chance it'll be there, and it'll be there within 2 days. Just convenience and dependability.
Yep.
And so who wants to, even though you want to patronize your friend, your family, different ones, who wants to go into all the groups and all of the, like, now, does this person sell this? Does this person sell this? And do all that research when it's one tap away somewhere else like Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
But then what happens is the communities are not as strengthened as they could be. The people that you care most about, that you actually could help and to have meaningful change in their lives, it's just not convenient, or you just don't know what that opportunity is. So, for example, I have a friend that has a outlet that sells a lot of hardware and a lot of home construction tools, like power tools and stuff. And so I'm doing construction on my home, and I keep going to Home Depot like 3 times a day because I forget stuff when I'm going and working on my house. And I go and get a paint sprayer, but I get a bunch of bolts and like whatever. And so he comes and helps me on my house. He's like, we have paint sprayers for like 1/3 the cost. I'm like, yeah, but I didn't know that. Like, I knew you sold power tools, but even if there was a 30% chance if I went there that you would have something there, I just got to get things done.
Because you just want to get it in the right time, convenient.
Yeah. And so now imagine in HubHive looking for paint sprayer, just seeing something, hitting buying now, not even, we're going to have the awareness that that's sold by my friend, but even if it's not, if it's sold by my friend's friend or my friend's friend's friend, basically you can empower the communities and bring strength to communities, whether you're a part of them or not. If they're a part of one of your friends' communities or whatever's the closest to you, it'll be fulfilled. And that's what I think we want to do, is kind of like, how do we meet in that intersection of patronizing those closest to you, but also finding what you need and having it be dependable and trustworthy. Because there's friends that we have, really good friends, who I wouldn't hire for certain things.
Yeah. And that you wouldn't buy chocolates from for Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
And the community or the voice of everyone around you would help to know whether you should or not. And that's part of what the beauty of the Hive Trust Score is that we're building, is to where if somebody says, this is great, this is great, this is great, then it has a high trust score. But if somebody comes in and says, this is subpar chocolate, it just melts as soon as you touch it, or that kind of thing, then that's going to have a lower Hive Trust Score. And that trust score is going to be based on the people that are around you, the people that are in your community, and not necessarily your friend, but the people that you know and trust.
Yeah, and so that's the goal. That's the journey starting on day one, we kind of put things out there and we try to find, why are they buying this or why are they not buying this? And what were the recommendations? And here's another thing. Everybody's so different. The thing that can build a Hive trust score that's like 98%, like guaranteed, there might be people who have different values and value things. Like you might value quality over price, and I might value price over quality. So think about services too, where somebody where money is no object says, I would totally recommend this person, and they did this and this and this and this. Where somebody else in that same community, there's so much to be figured out in the algorithm to say, who are you that's shopping and searching? And that's the beauty of all these recommendations, is to go in there and categorize and say, there's 30 people who gave a recommendation who we can see by their behaviors they value the price or a good price.
Yeah.
And there's 30 or 40 that we can see by their behaviors just value quality. Just a lot of things like that.
That's a really good thing to take into account to be able to know about somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're basically going to know everybody's personality by the things that they buy and the way that they search and the things that they actually use.
Yeah, and so I think you start off with a group because your communities should, the recommendations from a community is really important. So there's product reviews and business reviews, right? And those are just from anybody, and they work out pretty good most of the time.
Yeah.
But just to that other level, especially for services, that other level to say somebody that I know used them and loves them.
That helps a ton. You went through the whole process of getting your door fixed and your screen and a bunch of siding and everything, and you went through 3 or 4 different guys that were recommended, and then the first guy you called, you just hurried up and did it.
So
tell that one.
So I actually tried this because I'm like, how do we make this better? I'm going to go through the best way I know how to do this. A storm came through, like ripped some metal sheathing off my barn and ripped my fence, and just it looked like a scene off of Wizard of Oz. And so I was like, you know what? Connect Utah is great and great recommendations. But that same community is on a platform that's maybe fragmented, or those platforms, they value addiction impressions and all those things. Like they just want you to stay on that as long as possible. So it's not like they're going to create things to help you find things the fastest way. It's discoverability, right? Yeah. I'm like, let's try this out. So I go on there. Hey, I'm in search of someone who can help me repair my fence, and puts the metal sheathing back up on my barn. And I got 40 something comments, recommendations. And so I'm looking at this, and if I have to do, so when you think about, because I'm a UX designer, you think about a task analysis, like let's outline the tasks that it takes to meet a goal, and then what tasks require like cognitive load or stressful or whatever. So I get like the 40 comments, and it's stressful thinking like I've got to, like, what do? Do I count the number of people who recommended this company? Like, I recommend this, I second that. Yeah. And so do you do your own like tally system there? And so, and the thing is, you got to wait that 2 or 3 hours. You're not going to get it immediately. And that's the beauty of HubHive in the instant, like based on these past questions and your specific needs, here it is. But when I went through that, then I was like, okay, and people like DM sent. So I have like on the back end, people just DMing me.
Oh, I didn't know that. So people, probably companies saying, hey, I do what you're looking for.
Yeah, and so it's almost like, oh man, I don't even know if I want to start this conversation yet because I don't know who they are.
Uh-huh.
And so there's that piece of it. But I go through it, I'm like, you know what, I just need to get this done, like person 1, person 2, person 3. And that's what I did. And then someone's like, oh yeah, I can come at like 3 p.m. tomorrow. And I'm like, well, can you, okay, that's good. And then another guy, I can come at like noon today. I'm like, oh, that's even better. But I want to at least get 3 bids. But then you have this like weird thing where you're like, do you tell the guy from tomorrow, like a guy from today already came and I like him better. And so, and the reason why they even come is you tell them things, the needs that you have, but these contractors or these service providers have questions that you don't know that they need to ask to qualify you. And so that's where like we're talking about even the AI, like picking those things up and maybe asking other questions like, do you need your fence repaired? What is it? Is it a vinyl fence? Is it this? And just asking a lot of those detailed things so that I guess you can get more narrowed service providers that are more applicable. But yeah, I call those 3 people. There's one that gave me a bid. It was like $3,000 or something. And then there are other things where he's like, oh, you actually need this, this, and this. There were some things that I could have told him that he became aware of later, but he didn't ask me the right questions right then. And so it ended up being $1,000 more in the end, and it was justifiable because like, oh yeah, I do want that. Yeah, I've got to have that. But looking at that, it took me quite a while to have them come in, and then you just had to have those conversations that just felt very unstructured, and it wasn't that pleasant of an experience. So,
and I'm sure that's what most people have when they're trying to find someone to repair something or fix something on their house or any type of service that you're searching for.
Yeah, so now think about you and I have a conversation and me saying, I need to get my fence repaired or I need to get metal sheathing.
Hey,
and you're like, hey, this
guy, he did this for me. And
he did it at this price and he did this. Like that would be, I'd be like, okay, let's call him up. We're going to use him.
Yeah. Trusted references. That's what it is.
And so nobody has, what do we have? Our top 5 closest friends who are they going to know with specific, like everything that you need in your life? But like virtually representing that same type of trust into an app is what we're going for.
Yep. And you think about the journey of what we started with and saying, yeah, we want to amplify opportunity for people that are just starting out to now we're going to connect people in these communities to say you're amplifying the people closest to you, but you're also connecting these communities in such a meaningful way to help everybody in that community, whether it's the handyman down the street or the mom that's making a bake sale or the dad that's trying to have a side gig doing laser engravings, whatever.
Yeah, it's like, how do you know all that stuff about everybody? And it's just so much work. So I was doing a workshop I think it was San Francisco that I was doing a workshop with Adobe. And that's when, and this was at the end of last year. This was like around the same time you were having this, like you and Raylan were having this idea, and then we started to form HubHive and what we were going to build. But I sat on an airplane next to a business guy, and the business guy there, like I just noticed that he was using ChatGPT and asking like, what are the good characteristics of a good startup? And so I thought, I know if I turn to him and talk to him, we're going to go into business together doing something. And so I just said, have you ever used ChatGPT 4? And he's like, no, I haven't. I'm like, oh man, it is awesome. I said, you can do everything from competitor analysis, like a lot of, financial projections and a lot of things, and thinking about the startup world.
Because that's probably where we set up our business plan.
Yeah, we were putting some things together, but he's like, wow, I didn't know that. And about 30 minutes into the flight, then he was like, so what do you do? How can I hire you? Like, how can you help me? And I was like, well, I don't even know what you do. And he says, well, we do, Kritsu Forum's Angel Investment Network. And so he educated me for 2 hours on what angel investing was, because I was pretty ignorant about that whole topic. But, coming out of that, we met a few times after that. But the value of that connection that you can see there, because I run an agency that does software development and digital marketing that aligns with, their needs to find startup companies and investors, there's huge value that can come from a random connection like that. But one thing that I told him on the plane when I was describing HubHive to him was, and people don't think about this much, but let's say there's 200 seats on the plane or whatever it is, how many billions of dollars, if you could actually realize all the potential alignment and value from, if I could sit next to someone on every single seat in that one plane, in that flight, how much potential value could I have from that flight? And, if that guy's was $1 million, let's say, there's $200 million sitting there that you will never have a real life opportunity to realize that value in there, because they all go their own ways, and it would take a monstrous amount of effort to even align on that. So now how do we digitally do that? Because that's the, in the network, digitally, we can find those same opportunities. And it's the same thing with a conference or a show, like a home show. Same thing. Like, you go in there with the 2 or 3 or 4 hours you have, and you align on some needs and some offerings. But how can you encapsulate all that so when you do have that need, you can go there and you're aligning with somebody there and just...
So let's talk about how HubHive will do that. How's HubHive going to align those 200 people on that airplane or 200 people in that trade show?
So career fair, for example. In the career fair that we went to, a lot of the students go and, what do you do? And what openings do you have? What internships do you have? Right? And it would be interesting to measure, to see out of the 500 people that went through there, and maybe the 30 or 40 booths, I can't remember, but that went there, who got a job right then, who didn't need one when they went there, but they needed one a month later. And so think about taking that in a career fair, having a community like the high school career fair community, having all the students in there and all the vendors in there, and having a structured list of all the job postings that are available and a list of all the resumes available. So 2 months from now, where I say, hey, we need content creatives and content writers, like, who are we going to get? We could go into something like that, tap people or resumes, do a quick filter, and these things are available globally. Like, there's LinkedIn and there's different things, but we're talking about enabling this for all communities at that level to help give somebody close to you a job that aligns with what you need. And so taking that, like, going in there and say, hey, here's 4 people that, and even as you and I have been working with interns and software development and things, we're like, I had no idea that kid does development and wants an internship, but we knew him. We knew him for 5 or 6 years, but we had no idea that he was in that space until we kept shouting that need. And then he's like, I could do something.
I'm in that world. Oh, maybe I could help.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I lost my train of thought.
Like, one of those was your brother-in-law.
Yeah.
Like, how much did you know him? Like, we're like, who do we find to help us with the startup and to, like, just to help us get things off the ground? And, like, randomly, I think your father-in-law said, like, hey, he's looking for a summer internship or something like that.
He told me he has experience in developing and computer programming.
And he's a wizard, too.
My eyes lit up, and I said, well, what has he been working on? And he says he's been working on these systems, and my father-in-law did, like, systems for a manufacturing company. He says he's one of the best that's been figuring out some of the systems that I've built.
And dads always say that, right? So
yeah,
it's like...
dads always say that. So. But he solved some pretty incredible problems for some of the businesses that my father-in-law's been through, and over the years. And he's a young kid, and so he has become kind of an all-star for us, an all-star developer that's been driving a lot of features.
Yeah, he's young and hungry. Like, I think that's the cool thing. So we're in this startup, we're building HubHive, where, we speak the vision and the mission within, I think we've got a team of 5 right now, 5 developers or something like that. It grows and shrinks depending on availability in school.
Yeah, we're going to be about 8. We'll have 8 by January.
But everybody that we have is, like, hungry to get this thing. Like, we got to show everybody what we're doing.
Yeah.
It's like it's the greatest show and tell in the world, where, you almost can't hire you can't find a better team.
No, because the inspiration comes from the excitement of building something that you believe in. And everybody that we found has come to us and said, we believe in this and we want to build it with you. Yeah,
so it's an incredible journey. It's like I've helped with other startups as a UI UX designer and having my own agency at Brainspin. We've helped startups like, Zapmoto was a fun one, doing the branding. And Zapmoto, what was it? Will zap your car, your new car to you, so you don't have to go to a dealership and get bombarded by salespeople. They just have a concierge bring the car to you. So really cool idea. We've done a bunch of others, some that haven't worked and some that have worked really tremendously. But like this was finally, we're like, for me, it was like, I'm done doing this. And it's been very empowering helping build success for other people. And it's been a win-win. They pay us to do it. But it's also, there's that ceiling of what you can offer, and they take off and they grow. But thinking about that, I feel like the last 15 years for me has been an incredible journey, especially not having a college degree. I have so many nuanced experiences of marketing and lead gen forms and working with startup companies and optimizing with A/B testing and like so many things that I hear about A/B testing for the first time and I'm like, what is that? I got to figure that out. And we take it and we use it and do great things with it. But now with our own startup, looking at what we're doing right now and knowing how to analyze behavioral data from like Full Story and Google, learning how to optimize a lead gen form and actually get value, like a form that somebody fills out that a service provider actually wants to pay for or that like jump on. It's been a really incredible journey that I feel like right now it's like, okay, you have all this, now go ahead, let's build something.
Yeah, you got all the experience, and that's kind of why I was like, I can't do this unless you do this with me. When I had the
not because we're best friends.
Well, I knew it would be successful unless you did, but yeah, I wanted an opportunity to work with my best friend, but also I knew that with your experience in the last 15 years, I wouldn't be able to replicate that. Like we've said before, I would just have a database of a spreadsheet that somebody could access in a Squarespace website if it was just up to me building it. Mm-hmm. But since you have your experience, it's become this massive app that we've built and a website that's, I shouldn't say massive yet.
Yeah.
It's massive in our minds because we spent so much time building it.
Yeah.
But once we release it, then we expect it.
Well, and let's go back to our Frankenstein model story then. So even that, where we say we're going to start without writing a single line of code, that was one thing that was, I told him, you can use Squarespace to host the businesses within a community and the products and services. And then you can use Airtable to have a form that people fill out that bring those structured businesses
Airtable
into
actually held all of that information.
Yeah, so like,
and then gave us the display embeds to put on Squarespace.
So we call it the Frankenstein model because I don't know if you know the story of Frankenstein is just piecing together what's there to kind of make something.
Yeah.
And so
that's what we did.
And so a lot of people are like, "Oh yeah, HubHive, like this is what it is." I'm like, "You have no idea."
HubHive's like that. What they know is like that.
That was the test. Yeah, it's a business directory.
Yeah,
for
that's
community.
all that is, and it's not even searchable.
It is.
It is. If it's on desktop, not on mobile. But that's the limitations of Airtable and the Frankenstein, the tools that we used.
But I mean, we did that. We have a group me that we're both in. It's like 900 people. There's around 900 people. And within 24 hours, we got 740 visits.
Yeah.
I think we had like 120 businesses on there. And we were getting consistently for months, like 70 daily active users, like going back. Yeah. And people started verbing us in GroupMe, like, hey, can
HubHive it.
The same question, HubHive it.
Yeah, because they'd ask the question, like, hey, I'm looking for somebody that will fix my sink. Then somebody would say, well, did you look on HubHive? And then eventually people said, HubHive it. And so we were getting marketing within that small group without even trying.
So now we're 10 months into developing the thing that we want to announce. The Frankenstein model still exists, and still to this day, in that only group that we've submitted, if anybody asks for anything they don't know, the response always is, did you HubHive it?
Yep.
And so, like, we're a household name in that small community. So, like,
it feels good, but
we just got to break out. And so that's part of the
That's a validation of
Yeah.
our idea.
And so now there's the fear of like, if we don't do this right, because we're building a whole social media app, a whole community-based goods and commerce social media app, and like there's this fear of if we don't do this perfectly, we're not going to meet that same concentrated level of validation that we got with just a simple, stupid directory.
Yeah.
And so, you know, sometimes you got to just let go of your fears and just do it anyways. And we're so close to announcing this. We're announcing it now. You guys know more than anybody, but we're developing, we're using it within ourselves. But when I go, like sometimes I'm like, oh, it's got to be like this, and that perfectionism, right?
Yeah.
But
what is that saying that goes? Perfection is the
enemy of good. Perfect is the enemy of good.
Perfect is the enemy of good. That's what we're up against right now. Is
Yeah.
we need to do this. Oh, we need to do this, but it's got to look like this and it's got to function like this.
And we did get pretty scrutinized when we like launched like a soft launch to like 100 people. Then they're like, why doesn't it do this? Why can't I edit my listing? Why can't I? I'm like, you can add your listing, be thankful of that. What if I want to remove it? I'm like, that'll be tomorrow. You know, but I'm like, just appreciate the 8 months that we spent on this.
And then we totally pivoted and did a mobile app instead.
Yeah, let's just do this on mobile. And we've learned cost to pivot and a lot of things through this journey. But we're going at it. That's what we hope to do. In this podcast, I want to find a lot of community hosts, a lot of different communities. So the host of Connect Utah, for example, to really understand what is the spirit and vision of those specific communities and how can HubHive empower them, but maybe not even specifically for HubHive, but just learn about communities. How do we showcase and highlight the types of communities out there? Because there's different types of people in a community. There's some that like to just be a member and be the beneficiary of the value. There's some that just want to create a community around them, around an idea that they have. Mm-hmm. There's different types of people, and I think we've got to learn from each of them. How do we provide the most value? It's like meetup.com. Before I even knew about that, I was like, I do UI UX design, I do product design, but I've learned everything off YouTube videos. I haven't gone to school for this stuff. And so, it would be cool to just talk with like-minded people and say, hey, what are you working on and how do you do this? And so, as I Googled that, I found Meetup, and it says, a place for people to meet together with like-minded interests or something like that. And, I think most people's first click would be like, oh, let's see what's available that I could join. But mine was, I'm going to create a community right now. So I created the Salt Lake Designers in there, and I created my first event, let's do this. And I had 60 people sign up to it. I'm like, this is went viral. 60 people RSVP to a event from a community that you just barely create. And I think the title of that event was how to prototype on the iPad, because it's when the Apple Pencil first came out, and they were Adobe had this mock-up app, and there were some other things. And so 60 people RSVP'd, and I'm like, we're not going to hold 60 people in my conference room. How do we do this? And so I limited it to 30. So there was a wait list of 30 people. And then I had some random guy hey, I've got to fly out to this for work, but if I see that your event's backed up, but if I can make it, I'm going to cancel my flight and do it later. But if I can, I'm just going to go to the flight. And I'm like, I would just plan on attending. We'll make room for you. And so he changed his flight. He came to the meetup, the very first meetup that I had. It was only him and me.
Out of the 30 people.
Yeah. So he was the only one that showed up. But the funny thing is, I think I've done a $500,000 in work for him, working together, and some of the most exciting stuff we worked on. But we talked for 3 hours about the iPad, and because he got his iPad and his pencil too, so we were just playing around with the apps. And he's like, I think we can have opportunities to work together. I think this will be great. And so we've been working for 5 or 6 years. He finally started his own thing, and now he's working for a big company now. But it was the value of just that community of one that just started.
Yeah.
And obviously it's grown since then. I think there's 2,000 members in that community. But that was my approach to a community, is, you know, hosting something and taking on something. Other people just want to be a part of that value and to kind of align those needs.
Yeah, they're just there for the show, and they get out their popcorn and just see what happens, and then every once in a while, then they will pop in and say something, or ask for something.
So our goal is just to learn the different categories, the different personas of people, and so many. We're going to find that there's maybe 2 or 3 types of communities within HubHive that thrive far more than any other types. And we can't take a stab at what that is.
Yeah, we can't guess what it is.
That's
we don't
what's
know
awesome
for sure.
about data.
Yep.
Like, it could be farmers markets.
Yeah.
Like, we find that we're just a farmer's hive.
It could be one that we don't even know exists right now, like a type of community that
and so
we don't know.
That's the thing, as far as any startups or anything. Like, I say it's safe to start on a hunch as long as you can follow up with the data that backs it. But if you keep going with a hunch, you're going to be missing so many golden opportunities, or holding on to something that has no value because your hunch won't let go of what's in front of you. There's bad hunches out there.
Yeah.
But, you know, the pivoting is key. Like, don't be scared, start on that hunch, but also make sure you're tracking stuff, because even with us, if we didn't have the analytics with our Frankenstein model of things, of like what to measure, we could be going and say, it feels like people love this. It feels like we're getting 1 million hits a day, or, you know, something like that. And that's where, you know, full story is awesome. Being able to use that within what communities are created, what types of goods and commerce are being sold in those, like the value. So you say, this community has 1,000 people, and there's 15,000 a month being generated through this community in this product category. Mm-hmm. So we're going to learn things about communities, product categories, individuals, and we're going to use that to strengthen and align. How do we find them and align needs with opportunities in the best way possible?
Yep, that's the beauty of it.
Yep.
So some of the things that I think about with founding a company, like I've started a company and had a bad business partner in the past. And
what did you say? The one thing I've learned about partners is don't have one.
No, somebody told me once after the business failed with this other guy, then somebody said, the best kind of partner is no partner. But I think the best kind of partner is the best friend. Anyways, when I think about starting an internet company, or like a SaaS company, software as a service, or any kind of company like that, then we've been asked the question, why are you the right person to found this company? Why are you the right person to drive this? And so with my lack of expertise in software and development, things like that, then I've told you before, like I'm a little bit self-conscious of those kinds of things. But over time, then I've recognized the value in being able to organize and to manage and create things in an environment for people to thrive in the company, and where I feel like you have the perfect talent set to build something like this. I feel like that I'm still trying to find that place, but I'm still leading the team or managing things and running things and being able to keep it to where it's an enjoyable, what do you call it? Enjoyable place to work.
Enjoyable culture.
Yeah, culture, that's the word.
Yeah. So, and just to speak to, I think what you bring is, you're a natural born leader, and a natural born leader, sometimes there's methodologies of how you lead and a bunch of things that, like, maybe you don't know the software world or agile methodology, or
I had to learn all that.
The software that we use. But you've led in sports and athletics, you've led, you know, in your own family, and even, you know, you've grown up from a lowly draftsman 20 years ago to now co-owner of Iridium.
Yeah.
And so, you know, to be able to build up there right now, isn't around 10 people that you personally, like, that you've managed. Mm-hmm. And right now the transition that you're having is you're creating leaders to manage now.
More people,
So
the same thing.
you've hired engineers that are managing to delegate and kind of put that on them. And so, sometimes you can have someone that knows the methodology and the system, but they just, aren't driven or don't have that natural born leadership. Where I know, like when we started, seemed pretty rocky for you. We're like, I don't know agile, and what's a sprint, and what's a story point. Let's just like track our time on this, or let's do this, or like just trust the system. But going in and learning, and like I remember there's times where they're like, I got it. Here's how we're gonna do it. And I'm like, that's not right. And you're like, I'm trying, and I'm like,
I'd spend like 5 hours setting up a sprint, and then
and I'm like,
no,
how do I tell him this and keep him wanting to keep going? But
it's been a ride. I understand it now.
It clicked, and and I'm like, do I just tell him like, hey, you can try it if you want, like just for his own journey, or do I say, I know it doesn't work, let's just do this?
But the cool thing is, I remember when you told me about Agile, when you discovered the Agile method. I remember walking and talking. It was like 5 or 6 years ago.
2017, I think. 16, 17.
So 7 years ago. So it's like, I remember talking about that with you, and you got so excited about the Agile method. And to me, it was like, okay, so that's just how you run a project. That's just what you do. And I tried applying it in my engineering world, and I remember just thinking like, no, like I don't know how that fits. But there are some things that Agile can be used for, and not necessarily the Agile way or the organization.
Yeah, so we don't use it to a T.
Yeah, you just kind of, that's the cool thing, is it's adaptable to whatever you are using it, whatever you need to manage.
Yeah, I think sometimes people don't have that click where they just do something because they're told to do it, and then they find like, oh, this doesn't work, or this does work, and then they just kind of stick with it. And sometimes like your situation is different than the million other people that you're working with, and somebody found a best practice and they've optimized it to fit the best category. But you can take those good bits and pieces and say, this is what I love. But there's things, if I don't understand it or I don't find, like I try to use it, if there's a time where I find like this just isn't helping, I cut that part out of it. And so that's one thing with the Agile. There's many things that I love, and it's, one of the things is now where they say that, like even with project managers and building planners, they give you a budget that's like almost like throwing a dart blindfolded on construction projects, right?
Yeah. Construction, you can do a lot better at managing a budget or even forecasting a budget than you can with software development. Yeah,
software is so like, what are we going to want tomorrow?
Yeah, it's going to change within a week.
So that was the part that intrigued me about Agile, is to say, hey, we know what we want today. Let's just budget 2 weeks.
Yeah. And
see what we can do. But
so I've grasped it. It's taken time, but I think I've gotten on board with it, and we use it now, and it's developed an app. So
yeah,
here we are.
Yep.
It's been a journey. It's been fun.
Yeah, it's been a lot of tears and joy. Tears
of laughter. I haven't cried yet.
Well, I'd say it's been a lot of stress, like trying to figure out, like, we've got our own operations kind of funding this thing and going and
bootstrapping it in our own way.
Yeah, and so like we're ready for funding. We're going that route, but it's been like we've had to tighten our belts quite a bit to just make it work.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's ready to just blow up, and we're going to start to learn the investment journey and see if we can get other partners with us to just help us really accelerate this thing.
Yeah.
So it's been awesome.
If there's anybody interested.
There you go.
Is that our thing now?
Yeah. Rabbit, turtle.